walk backwards for this?
No, I'll walk backwards. Morning, Jason.
Morning, Chris.
What you doing?
Walking down to a boat. We're taking a little breather break today after riding the northeast portion of the Scar. We're staying over.
Pause. Hi there, bear.
4 paws.
4 paws.
Take a breather day and just chill out and maybe record some content for other videos. But right now, we're about to take a pontoon ride. It is Moto photo, by the way. Moto is not necessarily motorcycle. Come, let's check it out.
Between grocery runs and riding to the gym and taking my bike to do photo shoots on the beach, I get a lot of time in the saddle. I do a lot of riding, but I was not prepared for what the sand had in store for us on this section of the South Carolina Adventure Route. Oh my gosh, it was pretty crazy. I really, in hindsight, wish I had gone out and done a lot more training in some deep sand. Even the roads that are around us, the farm roads and the forest roads that I get to ride through when I am doing off-road trips or just little day rides, are hard packed. Gravel, dirt, you know, they're pretty hard packed. Some clay, but we have no sand. So again, I was just woefully unprepared for this crazy, deep, silty, baby powdery sand that we went through. The cool thing about the CB500X is it's a fairly light bike, you know, as far as bigger adventure bikes go. But it is a little bit top heavy. So, you know, when you get a little bit of wishy-washiness underneath your wheels, it is a little bit easier to tip over on a top heavy bike. So that was working against me. And the other downside is my CB500X happens to be the older generation with the 17-inch front wheel. Between the years 2013 to 2018, the bike had a smaller wheel up front, a smaller 17-inch wheel up front. The 2019 and on models, they upgraded it to a 19-inch front wheel, which I think that is the biggest limitation to my particular bike, Trinity. She just has such a small front diameter wheel that it's impossible to cut through sand. So when you get into that deep sand, that smaller wheel is just pushing the sand side to side instead of cutting right through it. So that was a bit difficult for me, and learning how to kind of ride the wave on top of the sand in spite of having knobby tires. You know, that was a bit of a learning curve. So that was the hardest part, I think, for me, was having that smaller front wheel. Now, you may have seen a video that we did recently where I changed the gearing on the CB500X. We swapped out the rear sprocket from a 41-inch or 41-tooth sprocket to a 39-tooth sprocket. And I think that really affects the gearing in a positive way overall for the bike. The stock gearing would have probably been ideal for the deep sand and the lower speeds that we were riding. But getting to and from the beginning of the Scar, or this new section of the Scar, we did ride a good bit of pavement, and I really am super happy with the new gearing on the bike. We'll put a link to that episode so you guys can check it out. But I just think it makes the gearing so much smoother overall for the CB500X when you're factoring in highway riding, you know, street riding and off-road. I do have the rally raid system on my bike, and we can put a link to that if you like, but it's the level 1 rally raid system, so the suspension is fantastic for road riding and off-road, just small bumps type thing. But any of the really rough off-road adventure stuff. It doesn't have any increased suspension travel. So without additional travel in the suspension, it is a little bit limiting. It isn't giving you a huge benefit. So there again, if I was taking a CB500X, I would try to make sure it was a 2019 or newer. And if possible, have the Rally Raid Level 2 kit on it, which gives you an additional 2 inches of suspension travel. And that is just so much nicer to have that additional room for error. Basically, that additional suspension gives you an additional layer of room for error, so that the bike can be absorbing things that you could end up turning into a mistake if the chips were stacked against you. So that would have been a nice thing to have had, a bike that was more off-road capable. But other than that, I was very pleased. Trinity did just fine. I was able to keep up with most of the guys. And we had a blast. It was a really neat bonding experience when one of us would, drop the bike over and we'd all go help pick it up. And, we'd help coach each other through some of the tough sections. And it was also really neat to have Dana along too, seeing his personality fit in with Steve and Jason and I, who have already developed a really good working rapport when we're on these rides. And to see Dana just fit in like, just a fourth cog in the wheel that just meshed right on there with everybody else. It was really nice, and we really enjoyed having him along. He and Chris Cox, we owe you guys a huge thank you for scouting this new Northeast extension. If you guys are anywhere near South Carolina, make sure you go check out the South Carolina Adventure Route. It's a fantastic adventure, and make sure you include the Northeast alternate route. It's totally worth it. It's a completely different terrain than the rest of the SCAR.
Y'all magnet fishing?
Yes. It's aluminum. The magnet got stuck between the shifter and the frame, and I got it up that way.
Yeah, I've been scuba diving out here. It's pretty cool, but
I have to. Oh, it's more fun than that, I think.
I would think so. Yeah, it always cracks me up. They'll take a metal gun, put it in a bag with rocks. Like, you don't think it's going to sink by itself.
These dogs have a rough life. Like, look at them. Like, I kind of want to die and come back as one of those dogs.
Did you just say dogs have a rough life?
Well, let me just say that nobody in their right mind takes a 530-pound motorcycle into deep sand. That being said, that's what we did. At least that's what I did. The northeast part of the SCAR is it's my backyard. And while I have my Africa Twin, I will tell you that riding the dirt roads around here is not my favorite thing to do. It certainly was one that I did manage to do it without dropping the bike. I have found that my Africa Twin, the sweet spot for riding on the dirt, especially the soft sand around here in the sandhills of the PD of the South Carolina, is just, it's challenging to say the least. You can go miles with these beautiful hard-packed sand, and then around the next corner, it turns to soft mush, and you've got one of two choices. One, you can slow down and pretty much walk it through there with your feet. Did that a couple times, I think you saw in the last video. Or you can try to get up on top of it. Now for me, I have found that the sweet spot for the Africa Twin on super soft stuff is to get up around 31, 32 miles an hour at the minimum, keeping your weight way back on the back wheel, and keeping your revs up, and it tends to do pretty well. It's still it's a little intimidating when that back wheel starts wiggling around a little bit, but all in all, with that 32 mile an hour speed, it tends to find its own, and you just kind of have to ride it out. I know there are guys that will probably laugh at this and say, man, you just need to get after it. Well, when you get up in years, you start weighing the old saying, the older I get, the harder that dirt looks. Well, that's right where I'm at. But the northeast section of the Scar, great fun ride. Beautiful scenery. It was a little warm to have all the gear on, but there was no way I was going to take off down those dirt roads without having some sort of protection on over and above the helmet, because I figured it was just a matter of time before we ended up ditching it in the sand. But if you're looking for a great ride, if you have a lighter bike, I say go for it. I come from a lineage of a 650. I dropped back down to a 250. And I've also got a TW200, which in the sand, that probably would have been a really fun bike to ride on this one, but it's fun. Get out there, check it out. It's a beautiful ride. The scenery's amazing, and you know, hey, challenge yourself. Just make sure you bring a friend with you just in case something goes south.
Back in the day, I used to do a lot of slalom skiing, and so out here on our lake, we've got a couple slalom courses, and if you look, we've got the yellow balls are the boat guides, and the orange balls are the turn buoys. And if you've never watched it or understood it, it's an amazing sport. You need to check it out. It's amazing. It's kind of like golf. You know, you just always want to get a little bit better every time, and it's an addiction, I promise you.
Hey guys, this is Dana from Striker ADV. First off, I'd like to thank the Moto Photo Adventures guys for letting me lead them astray on the Northeast Alternate. It was a pretty interesting trip. I hope you guys like the videos so far. So here's a takeaway that I had from this little trip. I've been riding adventure bikes for about 6 or 7 years. Started in Colorado, and you know, I've ridden all around the country. I prefer technical riding more than anything. The one interesting thing about this trip was you had riders of different skill levels. Jason, for example, had never ridden in sand, or barely had ridden in sand. And then you had Steve, you know, who has ridden motorcycles longer than I've been alive. And then you got Chris, who's kind of a little bit of everything. So the interesting thing with this trip, I thought, was, you know, you had the different riding levels and skill levels. The other interesting thing with this trip that I had to take away is that the area that we rode through in the Sandhills is home to the Sandblast Rally, which is a rally that happens once a year where people race enduro-style motorcycles and adventure motorcycles, along with rally cars and race trucks, through high speeds in a Dakar-style time trial format. It's very unforgiving in terrain, and it's usually cooler when they do it. But the big takeaway for me was we did a majority of that route when it was triple digits out, and we did it with riders who weren't really used to riding in sand that deep, and with bikes that weren't probably set up for it. So I think that's a pretty interesting factor that we had right there. That being said, the Northeast Alternate, I think, I'll have to ask the Moto Photo Adventure guys, but I think it fulfilled its purpose. The idea when I developed that route was to basically make a route that goes into the northeastern part of South Carolina, and basically to make it as challenging as possible. Now, yes, there's a lot of paved portions, and it does get, you know, kind of monotonous, but the unpaved portions, especially in the north, can be very tricky. You know, you've got the deep sand. You know, you've got some clay and mud roads up there that you get a little bit of water or a little bit of moisture in the system, and it's very difficult to get through there. And then you saw there's one route where we actually had to do a bypass, and that route is actually usually a giant mud pit. So that being said, weather can play a huge factor in that part of the state, and I think that the Northeast Alternate definitely was one of the more difficult alternate routes in the South Carolina adventure route. So I hope you guys enjoy the videos. I hope you guys enjoyed riding it, if you do, it was a blast to develop and recon it and map it. So yeah, get out there and ride it.
We are on Lake Robinson. It was a man-made lake built in 1959 solely for the purpose of a cooling pond for the H.B. Robinson nuclear power plant. It is, at one time they used to have a coal fire plant here as well. They have since dismantled it, sent it down to South America, and we get the coal credits, and they still do the hydrocarbons for us, so it's not necessarily a net gain, but it's pretty funny. But anyway, it's a great little lake. It's 6 miles from bridge to dam, and the average depth of this lake is right at 11 feet, and it's a great little recreational area. I love it because it's a heated lake, and which gives me 12 months of water skiing.
I wonder what the difference between this nuclear facility and a dome type building versus a nuclear facility that looks like the chimney stacks on 3 Mile Island.
The convex chimneys are actually cooling towers where they run the hot water through and it cools the water, where this lake is the cooling area. There's a canal right beyond these trees that runs all the way down the other end of the lake. The hot water comes out, runs all the way down. It's not allowed to hit the lake any hotter than 113 degrees. And there's an average temperature that they're supposed to maintain. And then over here is what they call the intake. It's over there to the right of the blue towers, and that's where they suck the cold water back in, run it through the plant, and it spits back out to the other end of the lake.
So I just want to know where the three-eyed fish are.
It's not really the three-eyed fish that you want to worry about. It's the ones that glow in the dark. After the Fukushima incident over in Japan, all the power plants had to have a backup and redundancy power and everything. So there's actually they built this brand new domed barn, for lack of a better phrase, because it has to be able to take impacts and all the rest of that stuff. There's so many nuclear regs that I don't even know about.
Remind me again what the Fukushima incident was all about.
Fukushima incident was a natural disaster in Japan where an earthquake caused a tsunami that ended up flooding or destroying parts of this nuclear power plant, and it had a borderline meltdown, I believe, or released a bunch of radioactive material in the water in their existing ground, and because of that, a lot of new nuclear safety safeguards came around from it.
Well, the fellows did a fine job of encapsulating what it goes into riding the Scar. I am the most unqualified on a motorcycle. However, I feel that I might be the most qualified in summarizing the experience like this. If you are deciding to ride on anything other than very smooth and very well-lined pavement, you're going to need a few things. Number one, a very light motorcycle with very big tires. It has to be very low to the ground to keep it from being top heavy, but very high off the ground so that you can navigate any obstacles that come your way. If you don't have that, go anyway, because I ride a top heavy motorcycle that's way too big for the roads that I rode it on. And as not to be your mother, but take lots of water. That's another big one. And if you're going to ride the South Carolina Adventure Route, don't do it in the summer. Don't do it in the winter. We've done both of those. And if you can't find another time to do it, well, then go in the summer and then in the winter. Take some food and take lots of breaks, and, well, take a pal, because as Steve said, you never know when things are going to go south in South Carolina Adventure Route. Otherwise, it was a great trip. I learned a lot. I learned that the most aggressive of us fell down twice, and the most inexperienced of us fell down no times. I don't know if that has anything to do with the 32 mile an hour floating on top of the sand thing, or if it has more to do with me going 12 miles an hour and not wanting to fall down. In any event, it was a great ride. This will pretty much wrap it up for our Reflections episode at the Oasis of Steve in Hartsville. So we still have the second day of riding left to show you. Stick around. It'll be coming out soon. Give me a minute. Oh, and Pike says hi.
Thanks, Steve.
close to that nuclear facility, I'm glowing.